So I had the intermediate housing bearing leak and I'm replacing it, starting on the outside here. I'm going to take off the linkage and then start taking off the rest of the housing. Alright, next part here, I'm going to use a 14mm with an extension to get off these 4 bolts. We got those 2 down here. Alright, over here. And then up top here, again, 14mm, I put 2 extensions on it just to get my hands away from everything, but just taking those off. Okay, once you get all 4 of these out, take those out, and then you can take a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, and you can pry. There's spots right here outside where you can go here and you can pry against these tabs. There's one top left, and then bottom right here. There, you can pry. You can see that it's starting to come apart there, and then just work your way back and forth. I sprayed all this again ahead of time. Just pry that forward and then push back against it, and you'll start to see that starting to separate there. So I'll keep working on that. All right, our next 4 bolts here are 14mm again. We're going to go here, up here, down here, and then over here to get our next section of housing off. So once you get these 4 bolts off, and then you pry the tab here that I just showed before, and pull the whole thing will come out with the shaft and all. And then I'll show from here how we take the other 4 bolts off. Alright, so I've taken the Allen bolts out of here, and then taken these out. Have not opened this up yet, so we'll see what this looks like. Alright, definitely need to clean that up. It's actually not as bad as I thought. I'll definitely clean that up also. That is actually the bolt that I just dropped. Alright, so once you pry this off, just wiggle it, it'll pop off. And there's your Epnoc grease. Just picture your bearing. Actually looks okay. So I'll repack this with grease and put it back together. Alright, now that this is out, the next step is to take a 10mm with an extension and remove this bolt. Alright, so we're in the engine compartment now. On this side, starting up here with a 10mm, loosening this guard. Take that off. I've already taken off the hose here for the grease fitting. Okay, so the other thing you have to loosen is the hose clamps here, and take this out, or disconnect that so you can slide the motor. So first what we need to do is we got to take out the bolts that are holding the engine in place on the motor mounts. So front, there's 2 there. These are 12mm. The other 2 are tucked in here and here. Back 2 are right there. And then right there. So you see I started to loosen them. For the back 2 on that side, I used a short 12mm. Up front here, the back one, I used a short 12mm. This front one, out of the 2, you can actually use a long extension like that. These are pretty easy to get to with a regular extension. And then, like I said, back there I also use the short 12mm. But spraying with a bunch of, let's see, I think I used PB Blaster and sprayed them, let them soak for a little while. very carefully broke them loose, and then sprayed them again, and then went back through around, and then took all those off. Then I'll take these exhaust clamps off next, and then slide the whole engine forward so I can get the bearing out. So I need to talk to somebody to find out about siliconing inside this, from either inside the engine compartment or pulling this hose off before I tighten that down. Because the fitting from over here attaches to it. Obviously it got salt water in it. And then when I bolt this back up, there's 3 bolts. There's washers that go on the clean out port side. There's a shim that goes between the fiberglass and there at 12 o'clock. And then there's 3 bolts that go here and then down on the bottom edges. So I'll tape all that together. Those 3 screws go into the housing down there, which I'll put those back in now. So you'll want to come in here and loosen these 2. What I did was I took the 13mm nuts off from this side, because otherwise they're going to spin. There's 3 spots there. And then I took and spin this to break loose. It appears to be silicone that they put on the other side of it. And then same thing on this end. That when you get out of the boat is going to be that. So I'm not going to see if I can break that loose and then re-silicone that so everything's new. I'll see what the new one looks like when I get it, but my assumption is that that's not supposed to happen. So as you go to put the engine mounts back on, you need to put some pressure on the one mount on the left hand side. So what I do is put the piece of plywood in there with that shim and then pressed against it, and then used a punch to line up the hole. Took the punch out, that way I didn't mess up the threads on the bolt. And once I had it lined up, leave that piece of plywood and that plastic shim in there, or wood shim, whatever you have. Take that out, go ahead and put your bolt in with the thread lock on it. Hope that helps.